Thank you so much for joining us, Mike and Zoe. We have you here. Congratulations on your NFT. And without further ado, let's just get started. If you can
Yes.
tell us a little bit about your background and your activities, it would be really great.
Okay. Well, I'm a photojournalist. I've been shooting for the Geographic, National Geographic, for not about, but 40 years. It's still my brand. And I shoot stories mostly in my area of interest and expertise, which is the Far East. And yeah, I'm known for going to far off places, lots of very off the track often. And yeah, I have a large following of Instagram followers who are there to see my straight photography that I do for the Geographic. And so, yeah, it's been a leap to go from there to working with NFTs to a very different group of people that are seeing my NFTs. So, yeah, I'll be happy to take you through that process. But I just want to say before what happened is when I started researching and getting into what is an NFT? First of all, my family is somewhat involved in that. My nephews, I have one nephew in Paris who is a miner on the French grid out of Paris, and then I have another brother and another nephew in Hong Kong who's working with NFTs or excuse me, working with Bitcoin as a marketing person. So I'm not new to this discussion. And then, of course, when Beeple news of course, every photographer took note, and many of my colleagues at the Geographic, we sat around and figured, how do I get into this game? And anyway, so started the research. And one thing that is always mentioned is the carbon footprint, which
Exactly.
obviously, as a geographic photographer, it goes with the territory. I've always myself and my colleagues have championed a lot of causes to save the environment, whether you be a wildlife photographer or shooting the natural world as I do, and this was bothersome, and we thought, well, what can we do about this? How do we lower this carbon footprint? And I have a small team around me, and we got brainstorming and came up with the idea of paying back for all the NFTs that were minted up until Earth Day, which is when we launched this whole project, and pledged to pay back what was spent to mine those NFTs, which came to 1.6 million. I'm not the person to ask how that figure we came up, but after thinking about it, that's what we are pledging, and the proceeds from the sales of my NFTs will go to buying carbon credits and up to 1.6 million. So that's the whole gist of it. So yeah.
That's amazing. So you're not completely new to the environment. Obviously, you've had kind of like a relations to that. How about you, Zoe? What was the inspiration point for you? Tell us a little bit about your background and how did you get into NFTs?
Yeah, sure. So I am an artist. I'm a digital illustrator and animator. I'm really active in the NFT space. I actually just finished my degrees at the University of Washington in art and Japanese. So I'm trained in both traditional art and digital art. I'm really, really influenced by contemporary Japanese artists and artists actually in the streetwear and NFT space right now. So recently I've gotten a couple collaborations with which have been really exciting at the beginning of my career. And I'm so excited to work with Mike. I obviously have a lot of influences from Japan, and most of his photography is in Asia. And we have some similarities and different people that we like in the space. So it's come to be, and I'm so excited to be here. Yeah, Matsui. So I did a baseball card collaboration with Ben Baller. And so we both really like the player Matsui, also known as Godzilla. And it's just such a coincidence that he loves this player and I just illustrated it and also love this player in Godzilla. So it's really come together serendipitous in a way.
Did you see he was on the he was there at the Olympics at the opening ceremony?
I didn't watch the opening ceremony, but now I'm going to go back and watch it.
Well, that's amazing. What kind of art are you mostly active in? Any type of like specific art?
Yeah, so I was really focused in illustration. So that was all the courses I took. And then I translated that over to digital illustration. So I used traditional painting techniques in digital illustration, and those have been my one-on-ones. And recently I'm working on character collectibles. So you'll see the collaboration piece that we did together is kind of reflective of the different flowers and crystals and elements that I use often with Mike's traditional photography.
Well, that's amazing. Actually, I was wondering, Mike, I mean, obviously you've been in the industry for decades, looking at obviously the nature, the animals, I mean, the planet Earth from a different lens and perspective. Your lens is entirely different. I mean, it's about passion. It's just something that is you're driven for. And how do you explain that when you're looking through that lens to, for example, explain that to us, that we're not as obviously we don't have the same kind of like look and perspective, and at the same time the daily life has made us so occupied and busy that we always somehow forget that it's such a bless that we live on this great planet, but again we forget that such a bless it is.
Yeah, well, that actually kind of segues into the NFTs that I produced, that we produced. And that is, I would take a lot of photographs, favorite ones, iconic photographs for me. And we sent them to Zoe and talked about maybe the story behind it. And she came up with this one technique using AI where she was able to make movement of, and that was another thing, of course, you notice with NFTs, there's movement and sound, which of course, being a still photographer, I never dealt with and never had any interest in video, never had any interest actually in Photoshop. I don't do Photoshop. I have assistants who do that. I was strictly a field guy shooting all the time. And the other difference is having a year and a half off because of COVID, which has kept me at home and got me looking into these, my files, all these photographs that I've taken over the years, many of which I haven't revisited in 20, 30, 40 years. So anyway, with these photographs, I started sending off, and we looked at lots of them. And Zoe came up with this one. I call it Sea of Monks. And it is, I don't know, is it possible to look at these photographs?
Of course. Yeah,
okay.
Of course.
All right. Well, I'll just tell you the story about it, because she got, of all these monks, maybe there's 100 monks there. This is, suddenly it hit me that this is a way to give the reader or give the viewer the experience of being there while I was taking the photograph. Because in this case, I was looking down on this group of monks who were preparing for a prayer session. And, as any group before something starts, they're sort of fidgeting around, looking. And of course, they're looking at me, who's up on this hill, looking down at them. They can see me, and they're all some way reacting. So I see these facial expressions. I'm up there going click every time I see something interesting that's different and moving. Okay, here we go. So yeah, she was able through AI show me how they get these monks moving. So if you can imagine a dozen of these monks, maybe you can see them expressions changing. And this is just exactly the way I saw it when I was shooting it. And so click, okay, this guy moves on the side, click again. Over here, somebody else is moving around. There's a guy with prayer beads, click, click, click. And that is, as most of the other photographs in the NFT, I mean, most of my other NFTs are the same way. She was able to, with tools and AI, to bring that viewer to the time, the exact moment when I click the shutter. And
well, that's interesting. How many pieces?
So
how many pieces of? Is it just one piece for the auction, or
the big auction on how many pieces exactly? Well, I have also one just a straight photograph from there, but it's the main piece is the Sea of Monks, and anyway,
what is this? And what is the story behind this? Why did you choose this specific shot?
because it's my maybe most iconic photograph. I sell quite a few limited edition prints, and yeah, it's the one there for the photograph. We feel, and anyway, it really says for me what I intend to do going in the future, also to bridge this gap between my straight photography as a storyteller for the Geographic to this new medium and new group of people we are meeting on in NFTs.
That's amazing. And Zoe, if you can explain a little bit more about how you actually empowered this digital art with an AI, and it would be really great.
Yeah, I would love to. So we have three main tiers, just really quickly, for the auction, and the monk piece, the main piece, is the platinum tier. So this animation, actually a company called DID did facial recognition software to animate the different monks' faces. And once that was completed and we were all happy with the result, I took those faces and stitched it in to the photo. I used After Effects. So I used After Effects to add the faces of the monks, and then I did post-processing to add both lighting and snow. I moved over to Adobe Premiere to kind of make the zoom in and out to kind of make it look like you were actually in a sea. And it was so important for us to preserve Mike's photographic quality from his traditional work with the digital work to just enhance that initial photo and then make it look like you were actually there, like he said, at the moment when he was taking the photo. So that was the goal with the Sea of Monks. We had other pieces. So we had a cube that was done for the initial open edition sale, but then there's also a collaboration piece where there's animation on top of his traditional photography. So it's kind of mixing. This one's the collaboration piece where it's also including my style, but it's mixing what are the possibilities of digital art and what can be created there with the possibilities created in nature through Mike's perspective. And actually, it may be really interesting to show you the cube, because what was really cool about this piece is I took Mike's photography on each face of the cube, but the background is AI generated GANs photos. So the AI actually created the patterns itself, and I just stitched them together for the background. So it's nature through tech and nature through the physical world combined, which is
also,
interesting.
Yeah, I was also going to add that these photographs are not, you might not know that what you're looking at is the bottom of a pond in Jujaigo, where the water is extremely clear. This is in a national park, which I call the most photogenic spot in China. And I'm looking down into at the bottom with reflection on the top, as well as seeing clearly through the water at either sand, which comes out as light blue since the water is, and then there's the green, which is basically pond muck, and then there's reflections on the top and reflections of the tree. And yeah, this is like a 3D slideshow that again came with Zoe's imagination and tools.
Well, that's quite fascinating. So now, Mike, that you have actually entered this space, how do you see that NFTs are going to be empowering or enabling artists in a different way in order to express their arts and also target their audience? Obviously, there's also a new market for this, and there's also a new kind of like way to have different audiences. How do you explain that?
Well, I'm on a talk, a Clubhouse talk actually on Thursday, where I'll elaborate a little bit, but I don't think NFTs are going to go anywhere. You have major art museums putting up pieces of art, and anyway, it's here to stay. And I was going to say to this group of photographers I'll be speaking to that better get into it, because this is another medium. Again, for me, the jump also, not just getting into it jumping in with both feet, but also using these tools and figuring out how to make interesting pieces out of basically still photographs. As I'm a storyteller, and again, that's been my medium, still pictures, and now getting into a whole new, different way of doing things. And of course, the great thing is being able to do this directly to an audience, as opposed and reaching a much larger number of people than my galleries. I have a couple of galleries who sell my limited edition prints as fine art, and this way, not only can I do it myself, but I can include a much larger audience to see the work. So these things are huge for photographers, artists, and yeah, that's why I'm in this space.
Well, that's amazing. How about you, Zoe? How do you see the environment and the industry?
Yeah, so as far as Mike's audience, I think this is an amazing expansion, because we have the NFT audience, and then he has this very strong traditional photography following. So not only is he kind of educating them about this new space that is so popular, but he's also diving in to the consumers and the community on his own as well, by doing this kind of innovative new work and collaborating with a digital artist like me, and having those kind of audiences come together in a really interesting way. As far as the environment, I'm so excited that we have this mission to offset the carbon footprint. To be honest, I'm trying to become more educated about the impact of minting an NFT, because when I first started, I was in school and I heard about this carbon impact it was having, and I didn't really know what that meant. So I was trying to get reading and listening to people in Clubhouse to educate myself before I mint the work, and how we can make it less impactful for the environment. I know artists like James Jean has gone on to wax and done his drops there because there's less environmental impact, and that's an artist I really, really look up to. So I try to follow in the footsteps of those artists and be mindful of the environment and how we can reduce that. And Mike obviously is doing an incredible job with this overall mission of the drop.